Currently, the way I see it, the industry is structured in a very siloed way. What I see is the biggest issue, in my opinion, is that surveillance today is largely reactive. So by the time PCR confirms an outbreak, transmission has already happened, often 2 to 3 weeks earlier. And PRRS alone, for example, costs US industry around 1.2 billion on a year.
Well, good morning. This is another recording, another podcast for the Swine Podcast Show Canada. My name is Ruud Zijlstra, and I have the pleasure of being your host this morning. And this morning I have with me Swaminathan Jayaraman, who is located at Iowa State University in the Veterinary, Diagnostics and Production Animal Medicine Department on that campus. Welcome this morning.
Good morning, Ruud. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm looking forward to having this discussion with you.
Yeah, thank you. So today we'll cover the topic of controlling disease outbreaks, and to give the full title, it's how to integrate data to help that control, and how can we move from reactive to proactive to make that happen. So that's an interesting topic. And as first question, Swami, what challenges do you see in how we currently track and respond to disease outbreaks?
Just thinking about it here, currently, the way I see it, the industry is structured in a very siloed way. What I see is the biggest issue, in my opinion, is that surveillance today is largely reactive. So by the time PCR confirms an outbreak, transmission has already happened, often 2 to 3 weeks earlier. And PRRS alone, for example, costs US industry around 1.2 billion on a year, as per Osameke et al. And that figure has grown since Dr. Holkamp earlier work in 2013. So part of this problem is that data is fragmented across many places. Some VDLs hold both diagnostic sequencing, some production systems, they hold their own movement, the production information. So all this data in different places, everyone has access to their own data, but the bigger picture is what I see is bringing all this together and being able to infer from that.
Looking to boost the productivity and health of your swine herd? High-D is the original pure source of 25-hydroxy-D3, proven in over 100 research trials and fed to millions of pigs each year in North America. High-D improves bone strength, immune health, and enhances overall performance. Whether you want to improve sow longevity, get heavier nursery pigs, or help your grow-finished pigs thrive, trust the original, pure, proven 25-hydroxy-D3 High-D. Learn more at hy-d.info.
And is that across all diseases, or are there particular types of diseases where this is more of a problem for?
A great question. So currently with Prime, we are focused on the three big PRRS, PED, and influenza. These are the diseases based on our interactions with the participants, the participating systems in our program who wanted to focus on first. So these are the first three things that we are focused on. And like I said, we all our models have been across all three diseases, and the same gap as in PRRS exists for PED and influenza A. And we see the outcome after the fact, but we sometimes miss the early signals because no one is integrating data across different systems.
And I presume that you picked these three diseases because they're most important for the pork industry in the Midwest, or were there any other reasons why you picked these three?
So we picked these three diseases based on our interactions with the producers. So currently in our Prime project, which is Porcine Regional Information Management Ecosystem, we work with 11 production systems.
Okay.
And these are the three diseases that the producers and participants, stakeholders, vets in those systems wanted to see and get better idea of.
So I presume that these are therefore important diseases for those 11 production systems that you're working with, right? They pick them based on their on relevance, likely for their production systems.
Yes. So in the Midwest specifically, these three are endemic and widespread. So these are not, we are not dealing with rare events. These pathogens circulate continuously through the US swine population, which means we have enough signal in the data to build meaningful models and forecasts. That's one of the reasons, and it's also different from something like African swine fever, which thankfully we do not have in North America yet.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, so they're highly relevant for the production systems that you work with.
Yes,
that's basically what you indicate. Yeah, excellent. So you've been working on a project with a goal of addressing these gaps, dealing with silos of information. What actually goes into the system that you're setting up to deal with this gap of information that is not shared?
This is an interesting question, and I would say is one of the most core concepts of what our project is and what it is about. So here, for the foundation, we started this project not from a data or technological standpoint, but more focused on what the industry wants, what the producers and the veterinarians are looking to do. So the core streams are diagnostics from veterinary diagnostic labs. We bring in animal movement records to show where pigs are flowing between sites. We have site level and farm level information coming in. We have ad hoc production data also coming in based on producer needs to answer specific research questions. So some things like mortality, average daily gain, vet costs. And as we mentioned before, the pathogens we are focused currently on are PRRS, PED, and swine influenza A.
And then
just to give a highlight about what the project is, the prime is about is we have 11 production systems covering around 25%. This is not a hard number. This is based on my estimate of US swine industry. And we have around 3,600 plus sites that we track on a weekly basis. This integrated foundation is what lets us do all the analytics and modeling. So we run descriptive work, create weekly trend charts. We have an automated classification system, which is an in-house algorithm for each of these diseases, which classifies a farm or a site based on their disease status. We also run spatial models, identify disease clusters, and with this, we have a client portal which each of the producers can log into, look at all their information charts, which is focused on that. We take data security very seriously here too, so none of the other information is shared apart from benchmarks.
So the spatial component, that sounds interesting. So how do you set that up? Are you cover all the sites on like a physical map? Or a map that you can have on the screen, so that you can see each of these more than 3,000 sites that you described?
Yes, to answer your question, both. So what we do is we send out these monthly PDF reports, which includes these physical maps or maps printed on a PDF report, which shows where the incident sites in the last 4 weeks are, the disease cluster regions that the producers can quickly take a look at through their email. It wouldn't take much of their busy day, but also, we all have this portal that I previously mentioned where they can log in. It's where we have all these electronic maps embedded in the portal specific to the production systems. They can log in, zoom in, drill down, look at the incident sites. We also have spatial models like LISA, which is local indicators of spatial association, which helps us identify hotspots, disease activity regions, and cold spots. Currently, we also have a model for a disease prediction of incidents, so that producers can be prepared 3 weeks in advance and expect what the unexpected.
So if I understand you correctly, over time you will actually create a very nice database to see how pathogens can spread around production systems.
Yes, that's the goal we are striving towards, working with all the producers and participants. And we do already have currently several programs that cover components of it, but currently at 25%. And with more interest in this program, we would be expanding and bringing in more data to see the whole picture.
Yeah, of course, a bottleneck potentially could be producer systems sharing information. So how do you actually make sure, or how did you actually collaborate with production systems so that they share data with you?
That's a great question. For this, we take a more of a producer focused or the end user focused approach rather than data or technological approach. So honestly, the data sharing has been the hardest problem than technology. I see that technology you can build, but trust is what takes years. So what worked for us is that Prime didn't start as a data extraction project. It started with conversations, mostly through Dr. Silva, who is my advisor, and his leveraging his existing relationship with the production systems. We sat down with each of these systems, asked what problems they were trying to solve, what they wish they could see, what were they tired of guessing about. And with these questions, it showed us the whole picture of what we want to focus on. The other thing that mattered is that we built a clear governance from day one. So data is highly secure, all stored within the firewall of Iowa State University. It's de-identified at ingestion. We do not share one producer's data with another without pre-approval. We have proper non-disclosure agreements and data security agreements in place, making sure that producers at the end of the day retain ownership of the data and they get back value of what they give us.
Yeah, so to roughly speaking, you have a very high level of security. You make sure that the data is stored properly and not shared with anybody else but your own production systems. And you started by having discussions to build up trust. And in the end, the producers see value because you bring solutions back to them. Would that be
yes, exactly.
Rough description? Yeah, excellent. So what patterns are you seeing in the data that a producer or veterinarian wouldn't see looking at their own data? In other words, what helps this integration of data solve for individual producers?
And that's one of the highlight things about this project is that producers no longer have to look at just their data, and their insights are not solely focused on their own systems. So few things that stand out. So no single farm has the full picture, or no single production system would be able to see everything. But with Prime bringing in all these neighboring production systems and sites, we can see the full network. We can see how virus moves through pig flow, how spring breaks in growing herds are often followed by winter breaks in sow farms, how certain spreads, for example, the highly pathogenic strains spread through specific movement corridors. All this information in itself would be invisible for a single production system when they just look at their own data. We are also seeing that the production phase matters more than people sometimes think. So what kind of farm it is it a sow farm, nursery, finisher, often tells you more about its risk profile than its just as geographical location does. So that's a meaningful insight for biosecurity planning, because it changes how interventions are focused on and how your efforts are allocated.
So are there particular types of production systems for which this data integration would be more relevant? For example, like production systems that have young piglets, or could you perhaps elaborate on that a little bit?
So what we are focused on here with the Prime project is not just a specific type of production systems. Currently in our project with the 11 systems that we have, it's all across the board. We have large scale production systems, some medium scale, small scale. So some who are more focused on breeding herds, and we also have growing herds, which includes nursery, finisher, bean to finish, and also farms such as isolation, GDUs, boarsteads. So looking at this all across the board is what all our modeling and analytics are focused on. So this gets us to the bigger picture, and to be able to also differentiate how each of these farm profile has an effect on the disease spread.
Please, could you walk us through what happens when your system flags a risk? In other words, you see data and you see likely some red warning signs come up. What then do you actually do when you see that happening? And how can that potentially then translate into actions on the ground or for individual farms?
This is the value part that our system, the Prime project as in whole, tries to bring back to the production systems we work with our production system, our participant-focused approach. What we do is when one of our models, such as the early warning system through the classification system or the prediction algorithm, flags a risk. On a weekly output, we send these reports back to the producer. So some of this is descriptive, which tells them what's happening in their network, what's circulating in the region where the wild type incidents are appearing. And some of it is predictive. We rank sites by risk for the coming weeks based on movement patterns, recent diagnostic, the overall seasonal trends. We also bring in weather information. So when a site shows elevated risk, our early warning system flags it directly, sends a notification to each of the system's veterinarian. Then they can decide on what action to take, whether it's scheduling additional diagnostics, reviewing biosecurity efforts at the site, looking at recent movements and planning movement reallocation accordingly, and just to pay more closer attention. So Prime is more of a decision augmentation and than a decision making tool. So the vets and producers always stay in the loop.
Would there potentially even be something like vaccination protocols that you potentially see change, or is it limited to biosecurity diagnostics and looking at animal movement?
This is a question we had from one of the production systems, and we've already worked on it in one of the projects and as published paper in Jayaraman et al. 2025, where we looked at the production parameters or outcomes from a production system, brought this and integrated it with all the data we already collect to be able to identify the vaccine protocols to see how does half dose versus full dose stack up in different phases in nursery versus finisher. And what we identified here has helped the production system focus their approach and their vet med costs more towards that. For example, in our paper, we identified that in finisher phase, a full dose provides more value than a half dose vaccination does, from the data that we gathered. And this is based on field data, so not a controlled trial. So this is directly applicable to that specific production system.
Yeah, again, highlighting when you collect the data over time and over a couple of different years, so meaning winter and summer seasons, you actually create a very powerful data set that can perhaps even think about prevention into the future. Would that be correct?
That would be accurate. And currently we have data coming in from 2018 to ongoing. So it's near real-time system, collects all diagnostic data, all these data streams that I mentioned on a daily basis.
Just out of curiosity then, what kind of a geographical area are you covering across these 11 production systems? Are we talking strictly the Midwest, or are you also going into like eastern United States, like North Carolina, or could you perhaps highlight that a little bit?
Yes. Currently, the majority of sites in our system is focused on the Midwest. But we also do have multiple sites coming in from North Carolina, Michigan, some from the Eastern Corridor that do flow into and extends to the west all the way up to Oklahoma.
Yeah, excellent. So you're building this very nice integrated system. Where do you think this is going into the future?
This is a question I've also given some thought about. So right now, Prime is ever expanding. We have 25% of the US swine industry, and I see it growing more in interest with what we are doing, and more participants coming in. And if we get even to 50% of the industry, this brings in a lot more data. And the goal is not to have fancier dashboards, but to provide value to producers in an earlier, proactive way, that there are fewer breaks, lower costs, and better outcomes for pig and the people raising them. So if we can move the industry from reactive to proactive in a measurable way, that's a win for the project.
And how would you tie that then to disease surveillance? In other words, is it remains totally reliant on producing, sharing their data, or perhaps something proactive? You should start surveying this herd because the 3 herds around it have potential issues.
That's what we are trying to do here with Prime. So when I mentioned producer sharing the data, it's not, I just wanted to clarify this, it's not focused on producer going in and sharing individual files with it. So what we are trying to get a fully automated system. So it's all hands-off approach and no additional work for the producers. And so this prevents any failure points. So everything has been set up to flow directly into our database. There are some systems that we still have to be able to bring in data through spreadsheets or emails, which we do. But the goal we are moving towards is a fully automated system that is up to date with all this information. And even with our prediction modeling that we are getting to, we want to get in a forecast 3 weeks or 2 weeks ahead that we can share with the producers so they can be more proactive and reactive.
It's time for our famous 3.
Yep. Very interesting. Are there any particular resources that you rely on for this work, or any particular resources you would recommend to our audience where they can learn more about this project and how the future of swine diagnostics for these 3 diseases may look like?
For this, the best way I would say to learn more about the project or learn more in general about what our team is doing here, the best resource would be going to fieldepi.org. That's where the Prime portal is through as well. They can look at other projects that our team is working on. And honestly, the resources that I go back to most often is not a specific book, since my background is not in biology or swine diseases. I come from engineering and computer science background. So it's more the people that have been working with these experts in the field, my advisor, Dr. Silva, my fellow grad students and teammates who have been my resource.
If I may, I would have one follow-up question. You clearly explained you have 3 diseases or pathogens that you focused on first. Could it potentially be expanded into some other pathogens as well?
That's a great question. And initially, we did start with just PRRS as a proof of concept. And then to be able to show that now we have all the foundation in place, that if we wanted, we can expand, is how we brought in PED and influenza. And later in future, if these participants want to see any specific diseases like PCV2, Streptococcus suis, we have the ability and capability to bring those in without much delay, and to be able to create the same reports and models that we do for these diseases, and make it more applicable towards them as well.
Well, thank you very much for this podcast information this morning. It's very interesting to hear about how swine disease surveillance may be rejuvenated into the future, looking more at becoming proactive as opposed to reactive. So thank you very much for that. So this is another podcast on behalf of Swine at Canada. And with me, I had Swami Jayaraman this morning. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ruth. It was great talking to you today and sharing what we are working on and sharing more about the project. Just a quick pitch, if any of your listeners are interested more on learning about the project or talking to us, feel free to email me at swamj@istate.edu or reaching us through fieldepi.org.
Perfect. Thank you much. Have a good day.